Welcome to the LDM Perspective podcast. My name is Kojo and I'm with my co-host
Mo. I'm Ali.
And we have three special guests. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Nasakia. I am a writer, a secondary school teacher and a social commentator.
Hi, my name is Michelle, one half of Two Journeys in a Pod.
And my name's Lorianne and I am an eager listener and just wanted to join in the conversation today.
Great stuff. So moving on to the conversation that we're having a conversation about the male and female dynamics within the family and society. So I guess a bit of background as in why we're having this conversation. A bit of background would be recently there was this whole TI thing that came out. I guess you guys know that TI story. If not, someone that really knows it will explain it to our audience. So really from that, it's been quite interesting because I was having a conversation with another guest that we've had on the podcast before, Lilia, and she was kind of saying that in regards to the male and female dynamics, it seems to be a bit archaic. It seems that people are still stuck in the dark ages. And yeah, it kind of fostered a very interesting conversation. And the reason why we just didn't want to have a male perspective, because that's what is out there already. So we kind of needed to have a good balance of male and female kind of talking about this to see where we are or where we've kind of got to anyway. So in regards to that, so the TI will kind of give us a basis, but then I guess the conversation will then progressively just go in its own way in that sense.
So TI basically featured on a podcast and he explained how every year he takes his daughter to see a gynecologist and checks to see if she's still a virgin.
Well, checks to see if her hymen is still intact.
That's
Hymen
it,
is
yeah.
still intact, yes, exactly, yeah.
So obviously he gets her consent, and the big backlash of it, one is why is he doing this in the first place, and two, how could he publicly embarrass his daughter in such a way by exposing that?
Yeah. And I would add three, did he really get her consent or did he
assume the father role and just did what he kind of thing? But I think, so it kind of goes into the whole male and female, because just added to that, and I don't know whether this is true, but I think when I was speaking to Lydia, one thing that she kind of mentioned is that he also has a son who is younger than the daughter, and apparently he's lost his virginity. So then it kind of goes into the whole thing, if your son is kind of doing it, like, why is he not? But anyway, I'm kind of like moving way too far ahead of the conversation. So just coming back down to that. What is wrong with a loving father, and that's with my loving father hat on, having a daughter, and I just want my daughter not to lose her virginity to anyone? I guess playing that kind of thing. What is wrong with that? Is there anything wrong with that?
There isn't anything. Yeah.
Trust is the first word that I think of, because I think when you're raising children, I mean, everybody has their own perspectives. I think that for me personally, when you have children, you raise them, they're not yours. They're not your property forever and ever. Amen. Like from the minute they're born and you sign them on the registry, they don't belong to you. So I think that you have to have a level of trust in your parenting that your children will be able to come to you freely and have that passageway open for them. I think it has wounded the level of trust within their relationship. Like if he's raised her and if he's raised her right the way that he wants to have her raised, he should have trust in the work that he's done, that she will be able to keep herself pious and, sacred until the right person. I don't think that it's right. And also in terms of the law, there is a law that protects children for a particular reason. Like it's not by accident that he has to have consent from her. Like there are some things that nobody needs to know other than you and your doctor.
Okay.
If it's not life-threatening.
Anyone want to add to
So
that?
how old is she? 16?
She was 16. She's now 18.
Now 18, and he's still doing these routine tests.
He's been doing it for 2 years.
Okay, first of all, TI is silly because your hymen can get broken through horse riding, through gymnastics.
I think the doctor
things
goes
like
through some
that.
of the
Yeah,
reasons.
but
as to why
he
they
does
always-
mention on there that his daughter doesn't do any of those things. She's not active in any of those ways, and that's why he feels
But-
it's supportive information.
Yeah, because
No,
he's kind of
it's-
ruling out
Yeah.
all those
He's
activities.
ruling all of those
If you
out,
don't
and she
do
doesn't
any
do
of
that.
those, then the only reason that, what is it called?
Hymen.
Hymen.
Hymen could be broken would be by you actually losing your virginity. As in, he can
So
say
not to be
that, so-
crude, but it could be other things that's not necessarily penetrative from a man. It could be other things. So with that, I think it's a control thing. And it's all right for his son who's younger to not be a virgin, but the woman has to be kept sacred and she can't do X, Y, Z, but his son is encouraged. And if she sees that, like if she sees that behaviour in front of, if he's displaying that same energy, he's not got the same energy for his son than his daughter, she's going to go out resenting him.
You think
And
so?
yeah,
Well,
definitely.
I also think it speaks to kind of the notion that a woman's sexuality is not her own, and from a very young age. And these are the things that, like, a lot of women have been battling, and a lot of women have been struggling, and can take into their adult life. And where you think that you're protecting your daughter, you're actually setting her up for more heartache and more pain in the areas of trust, because if her sexuality is not her own to learn and to shape, obviously with the help and guidance of your parents, but not in a like intrusive way, then she might not be able to make those decisions and have that clarity of thought for herself, because she's always relied on somebody else to do it for her, which I think could be damaging, like, for her in the future.
So what do you guys, my co-host, what do you guys think about this? Because we got the...
The men are quiet today.
I know.
No. Do you know what? I'll be really honest with you. I obviously don't have a daughter, so it's really difficult for me to personally answer that with a really kind of sensitive aspect in terms of how would I really feel in those situations. I'll be honest, I think I will be a very protective and controlling dad, but then I've also grown up in a family full of women and sisters and stuff, and can I kind of understand the empathetic side of how they would be going through things and understand what certain things are personal to them.
I guess if you feel I could chip in, if you...
Yeah. So I don't know how I could personally... I personally think in terms of T.I., I think it is controlling, and I definitely more see it in terms of the embarrassment side, because I don't know the dynamics of his relationship with his daughter, and they could personally actually have the understanding that it's something they do yearly and she's okay with it. I honestly don't know the dynamics of their relationship.
But just to add to that, she's actually come out against what her dad's done. So people have posted on Twitter and things like that, you know, outraged tweets and things like that saying that what he's done is wrong and controlling. And she's been like, thank you so much, like, for...
Oh, because she felt like that, but okay.
Because she felt that way, maybe because she was embarrassed as well, but also a part of that is that she doesn't agree with what her dad's been doing.
But from my understanding, she's never actually clarified in terms of that.
If she's in the room and her dad's saying, go on then, sign the paper, which part of her is going to be like...
I think...
Do you know what I mean? She still lives at home.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, this conversation, because when Lily actually shared the post with me, and I think just being a man, and a lot of the times you have to take ownership to say how you think, and because it's been a man world for such a long time, I was kind of like, oh, what's wrong with it? Like, seriously, I did say that. And obviously, looking back at the conversation and stuff, I was like, okay, why did I think that? And part of what I thought of that was that, of course, I have a daughter of myself. And the thing that you mentioned trust, and I think Mo touched on it. And I think it depends on the relationship that you have, the father and daughter relationship. However, I kept on speaking to her, and she was kind of explaining some of these things about invasion of privacy and all these kind of, it's like your body, you don't own that person. It kind of made me understand. But then I think for a lot of the guys, it might be challenging because it's been a guy's world for such a long period. Almost like the ownership of a woman's body is something that you never think about. It's almost like the white man and the black man. Because it's the white man's world, like they will find it very difficult to understand the black man's experience or the black person's experience, if you get what I mean. And I kind of felt a bit of this. But then I think added to that, I always feel like fostering good communication and good relationship with your children, whether irrespective of whether they're male or female, it doesn't really matter to me, because I feel like as they're growing, they need to feel that they need to have that safe space to kind of have that conversation with you. And it's not just conversation about sexuality, it's just conversations in general about their life. So you be able to then chip in. The problem that I feel like some parents might have is that when you don't have that channel of communication, a lot of the times your children are living separate lives from what they actually show at home. So I think that's what. So I guess from a guy's perspective, initially I'm like, oh, what's wrong with that? But then I was saying, what's wrong with that? To say that if they really have a good bond and they both understand, and maybe it's something she wants to do, and I don't know in what context, but if it's something that she wants to do to show that, then like, what's wrong with that? But I totally take that on board. I feel like for men, it's harder to understand some of these things because we've kind of been in that thing for
Can
such a
I
long
tap
time.
into that? I think first of all, I don't know about the story, and I don't want to know about the story. But T.I. himself is hypocrite. The reason why I'm saying that is hypocrite. Himself is a rapper. He knows what he's doing. He's sexually doing a lot with these other women. So he knows what he's doing to other women, another man is going to do it back to his daughter. It's a psychology kind of mindset.
But doesn't that support his kind of actions? Then, in
No,
that sense?
I won't. No, I won't tolerate that.
No, I'm not saying
Support is a
support.
strong
I'm
word.
saying in terms of in his mind,
It gives him the reason as to why he
because
might
he
want to
knows
take
how
this
he
stance.
is in terms
No,
of women and stuff.
that's what I'm trying to say. He's hypocrite because karma is not a good thing. You know, as a man, what you're doing to a woman. If you know that what you want to do to a woman, somehow as that man, you're going to have a children, and you're going to have a woman or a female or a male. So your action, that what you're doing, you have to make sure that it addresses with your future line. Okay, fair enough. Sometimes it might not work. Things might turn around. You might be a good guy, and out of the blue, you have children, and then that child or that lady that you have that's becoming a woman now might not be the social way you want to do it. But if you do your life according to how it should, and know, if you respect the woman in the first place, he respects his wife. Does he have a wife?
Yeah, he does, but he doesn't respect his wife.
All right, there you go. So that's the conclusion to that. That's what I think.
I agree, because I think it definitely has a lot to do with like respecting of another human being, like regardless of who it is. Do you know what I mean? And like kind of like what we were talking about at the top of the show, like in terms of what are the values or what are the roles of the men and the women. And it seems to me, maybe I'm wrong, that in this particular situation, exclusively looking at where he has a male child that is younger and sexually active, I don't know what conversations they've had with him since he's been sexually active, but it seems as if there's two very different paths laid out for his son and for his daughter, and he has younger children than that still to come. And the perspective that I'm seeing is one that is very controlling, maybe because of the fact that he has been a womanizer and he doesn't want these things to happen to his children. But in the same breath, you chose to have the children, and the children are not going to be yours forever.
Of course not.
At some point, you're going to have to let them go and live their life.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, what is the consequence? What is the consequence if they go into the office and the gynecologist come back and says her hymen is broken?
Yeah,
what
actually,
then?
yeah.
So what
Yeah.
are you really saying? And the results do not belong to you, because I think he said a comment like, give us our results. And it's like, it's not your results. Those are her results for her body. And she, in the same way you teach your child to wash properly, to do their homework, to prioritize their time, and to learn to become an adult, there are certain things that you then need to pass over where she needs to be responsible for her actions and for her body. And you need to pass on those responsibilities to your son as well, especially when you have boys and girls. I think you're not painting a very good picture for them going into the world if you're preparing them with very stereotypical ideals. The real world doesn't work like that.
Let me add this into this. You mentioned very value point. When you have your child, once you've registered, they're not your own. I understand that, but this we black mindset, we always seem to think when our child can never be older than us, right? We have that mindset. However, moving forward from that, it's like to say, when you have your child, there's a line you need to have, and that line is trust, honesty, open up. Your child's gonna go through things, but it's how you address the situation from when they're young, whether or not it's up to them to choose or not. But if you, as a child, very overprotective, that line of that child, I'll give you an example. My cousin, one of my cousin, is a girl. Her mom used to lock her in from young, from like under 12 years old, used to lock her in constantly. The time that she had the opportunity to go out, she had a child. So that was an overprotectiveness. Do you understand? So her mom never trusted her. Her mom was so scared of the whole world. As soon as she stepped out of line, she had a child. That was the first time. Next to around the area, the boy. So there's a balance. I can't own my child to a point. But if I have that relationship as a love, then they'll understand that I know the best for them and the mean for them. So it's up to them to choose, but I'm there to take the baggage. I'm there to hold them and support them. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think even when you're looking at the scenario, and if the situation about his son is actually sexually active,
Yeah.
and especially if they haven't addressed it, then I find it very difficult, as in the stance that he's taking with his daughter, because
very
you're leaving
extreme.
your son to actually be sexually active with someone else's daughter.
That's it.
But then you don't want your daughter
That's
to be.
it. That's what I say, it's hypocrite.
It's very difficult
Double
for me.
standards.
Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I guess the reason why I put that as a blanket for our conversation, then it goes into the whole dynamics. And I guess what I would like to kind of move on from would be, why is this kind of like set up in the first place? Like, why do, I wouldn't say men, but I guess why do the world see this kind of like ownership with women in regards to their sexuality, in regards to what they can and can't do? Why is that being the case in the first place? Because I guess this is what dictates this kind of like attitude and behavior.
I think there's like definitely, I don't know if it's a myth or if it's actually part of history, I don't know, but I think there's just definitely like a notion of like men having dominance over women in a sexual capacity, like as a weapon or as a tool to assert power over women, you know, whether physically or, do you know what I mean? Like, you know, you're under the care of your husband. It's kind of been a setup in some societies, and because obviously we live under the Western ideology where, you know, the man is the head of the house and they would go out to work and the women would be the, you know, bearers of children at home. We've carried that, but just quickly, that's not necessarily the case in every like culture in every country, but it's definitely something.
Is that not though? Because that's why I put my hand up though. Because I know you say a Western ideology.
Yeah.
It's either we're saying, but because I guess the problem with Africa is because we were colonized, right? So
A lot
in
of-
regards to the traditions and
A lot of it's
cultures
been lost,
before
yeah.
could have been lost, right? So when you say the Western ideology, you just trigger something in my head to say, is this really a Western ideology or is this like a whole world ideology? Because for me, it kind of seems
Well,
like
the Western
more on the-
ideology is the whole world ideology.
Okay.
Which
Well,
so
moving forward now.
moving forward now, yeah, but definitely
not,
I
not
don't.
back then.
I think in the past it wasn't.
No.
Because
I think in terms of, all right, I'll be specific. In my country where I'm from the Baganda clan. Our cultures before the colonizers came there was very much more on the male kind of dominant side, whereby the woman would come to the man's tribe or family and is now basically part of that group. She's taken away. You have to pay the other family money or dowry or whatever in order to take her. She literally stays at home, looks after the family while the guy provides and do. That personally isn't more Western. That's literally a culture that we've had for generations.
I
after generations.
agree.
Even in the
I-
animal
I-
kingdom.
I agree.
Yeah,
no,
in the
no,
animal
same.
kingdom.
But
yeah.
not, no,
Not with all animals,
no,
though.
no, because in the animal kingdom, if you look
I
at
think
the
with
lions,
lions,
the mums
they
are the ones
go the
that
hunting.
hunt.
Yeah, the mums are the ones that hunt.
And the men
and
just
to
to bring
bask,
back
wait for the
for the men to dominate.
Well,
And in their kingdom,
Yeah.
if a lioness has children with a lion
Yeah.
outside of that tribe, that child is killed
Yes.
by
Yeah,
that
could
lion.
be.
So they're still
Could be.
the head of the house. It's just the woman does all the work and then brings it back.
Yeah,
They just-
I
the
agree.
lazy-
And
Right.
they're the more aggressive hunter.
But the thing is, but I think it's not as simple as that. I mean, we're kind of going off topic a little bit, but even within that, like if you look at old traditions of why maybe you would say men were the head and the women went to live with the men, it's because they were more agricultural societies. So like in terms of hard labor and things like that and working the land, obviously it would maybe, I don't know,
No,
it
go
would
on.
be
I think
more
that's- I can
acceptable
understand.
for,
Yeah.
you know, men to be strong, to work the land, herding animals. Do you understand? So obviously then you'd have to, obviously you're not going to stay at your mum and dad's, you're going to go and live with the person who's earning and who has land. Do you know what I mean? So I get that, but I don't think that in all societies, like, this is just the norm. Like, I definitely think that there has been an imprint in terms of Western ideologies on the rest of the world. Whether that's true in every part of the world or not, obviously it's not. And even in places in different countries in Africa or different places in Asia or wherever it is in the world, like, I definitely do think that there has been an imprint.
Let
personally.
me add into that. There's two things. If you look in this world, in this country, United Kingdom, who dominated? Woman, right?
What is
Queen.
Are you talking about the Queen as
Yeah,
the head
Queen.
of the state?
Queen, head of state, okay.
She has power, right?
But that's only because her parents didn't have boys. Otherwise, we'd have a king.
But we do have a woman. Just forget about.
Yeah.
Just to add on what you're saying, just so you know, because she's the Queen, her husband is not allowed to be called king.
Yeah.
But if the king has a wife, she can then be called queen. That's the
Yeah.
dynamics of how it's more male dominated.
Yeah.
I understand, but you're forgetting about biblical as well. Woman has the power.
You made the point regarding the whole setup, the family setup, because I think I asked the question about to drill down us in why we are where we are regarding the world and why men are kind of in this kind of assumed role of having that kind of power over women. And he kind of made that point regarding the whole Western ideology, which is the man going out. Yeah, the man going out and the woman staying at home. And kind of we kind of said, is this not like a world thing kind of thing? I think that's where we are. If I've kind of covered that, I think
You
I've
were
pretty
going to
much...
say, Annie was going to say something, but I think I might have changed the way I'm saying that. Like, I don't think it's exactly that. Maybe I think saying Western ideology might be a bit bold, like too strong. Like, I think maybe in terms of the way in which the roles are respected, in terms of what the role of the woman is or isn't, or the man is or isn't within the home and within society in general. I think that there is an ideology very prominent within the Western world in terms of what family should look like, which might not necessarily resemble that in other cultures and countries, but it's definitely promoted, if that makes sense. So just quickly, for example, like in the Western world, you kind of look at, you know, the man being the breadwinner, earning the most amount of money. The women, obviously more women are working and more women are independent, but kind of when I was growing up, it's kind of like women were seen as the caregivers, they were the ones at home. But even then, you know, you couldn't have too many kids. Do you know what I mean? You couldn't be at home not doing anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then when they go and travel to other places in the world, it's like, oh, this woman has like so many kids, she must be so sad. Do you know what I mean? Like, so like it's, I don't know how really to phrase it, but there's an ideology that is there, that is placed on the world. I don't really know if I would phrase it completely as a Western ideology thinking about it, because you guys are right. Like, there are many instances in many countries where, you know, men and women are happily living their lives with the men having a particular role to go out to work, whatever, and the women to raise the children, and they're happy and they're fine with that. And it might not necessarily just be something that was imposed on them.
What I was tapping on before, not too long ago, we are forgetting our history. This is what I need to make we all understand. First of all, a man cannot. Let me elaborate and put it into properly. Women are the giver, they're the receiver, they're the giver of life, and they make sure that if it's not for a woman, we won't be here. We need to understand this. We need to understand this. We need to have the control, the mindset, and be blunt about it and respect women. Because in my family home, I'm happily married and so on. And what men are forgetting, in a household, woman has control. Whether you like it or not, even though you're a man that is dominate, you can be dominating, but outside. But when you're in the house, you're not dominating unless somehow you're a guy that want to challenge everything. But you have to lower your gun. Women are the power, are the dominating for everything. I'm referring it to biblical because biblical, we forget in the Egyptian times or before that or life. I can use the word Christ. If we can say in a line, I don't think I'm going off topic here. I just want people to understand. I know the subject is male and female dynamic within the family and society, right? God specifically came to Mary and said Mary should conceive Christ. That's a powerful statement there. So Mary has done so much wonders for women to have the power till today, if we look back into it. And as we are mentioning about T.I. or whatsoever, I think he's a hypocrite, like I mentioned before, because he loves his wife. So what kind of educational is he doing to his daughter, but what is he saying to his wife? So I find that a bit hypocrite because as you guys touch into it, he's telling to his son, oh, you're a lad, go and have much fun as you want, but because of the girl, you need to stay in.
Yeah, but that's true though, because she's more vulnerable as a woman. She's more susceptible to STIs. She's more susceptible.
What about the guy?
For example, the way an STI would affect a female and the way it would affect a man is completely different.
Okay.
And women, and there's sometimes that men can just be carriers of STIs and STDs and it not have any biological effect on their person. Like, they're fine. And then they can give that to a woman. It can affect her womb. It can affect her ovaries. It can have so many negative
I understand, but he could have educated her. He could have had the education from early age as a man. When you have a daughter, make sure that daughter is close to you. If I'm gonna have a daughter, I'm gonna make sure that she's close to me. She can talk to me about anything. Once I have that opening with my daughter, there's no room. There will be a room for error, but not to the extreme, because she can feel like she can talk to me. I'm not gonna snap at her or anything. She can talk. I can tell her, do whatever you want to do, but this is the rules. Control yourself and know the right thing you need to do as a woman.
But isn't he doing that? Because he's taking her.
Well, no. That's a control freak in that sense.
The way it is like, go on. I need people to get their point across. So you get your point across, then Ali could then counter, or anyone could counter. So go on. Sorry.
All right, no. I just feel like he is being a good father by demonstrating that there is a difference between women and men, especially when it comes to sex, and also that women are more vulnerable when it comes to sex, and that distinction has to be made. And for me, I don't have a son as of yet, but when I do have a son, I will show the difference between my son and my daughter and say that there is a difference, and my daughter is more vulnerable, and that's just a fact. And it does suck to be a woman and have to pay a penalty for your sex, but that's the truth. And I think that if women are more educated at the fact that we are the ones that the pregnancy will fall on us, the abortion will fall on us, the miscarriage will fall on us, the STI and STD's repercussions will be even worse for a woman than it is for a man. And that falls on us, and we do need to be educated to know that this is the limitation we have by biology.
But as a family, as a parent, is it not your objective to educate your children from early age?
It is.
So once you've done that, your child, he or she, will understand the consequences in a longer line.
Yeah, she does understand.
But has he done it from start? Because what I'm getting from is that he's taking over control of the child and taking them into that. That means he hasn't done it from the start. That's the understanding I'm getting.
I don't know
from.
if it means that he hasn't done it from the start. I think maybe he's not in his defense, but maybe my perspective is that obviously she's reached an age where he thought she could become sexually active, so that's why he then took that action. I don't know. However, I think that there are levels, and I think that it's in the same. I understand that in many situations women can be girls can be more vulnerable, but I think men can be vulnerable.
Exactly.
But it's not the same way.
Well, we don't know that because we're women.
But it's a fact that they're not more vulnerable. Like if a female's got HIV and a man's got HIV, for example, the woman can only give the HIV to their future child, possibly. The man can't. Like, it's completely different.
Okay.
Yeah, but they can give it to other partners. I mean, to be honest, like it's not a, for me personally, it's not a women suffer more, men suffer less, or whatever. Like for me, it's just a simple fact of, do you trust your children? And if you're raising them right, you should have trust in the work that you've done. That you do not need to take your daughter to a gynecologist office or doctor's appointment and basically force her to sign over her rights to you seeing those results. If you want her to go to gynecologist reports, you can even, there are so many different ways that you could do. You could say, look, I want you to go yearly, get yourself checked out, have your thing, come back and tell me. Then you give the choice to her whether she wants to tell her father or not, or she could even go with her mother. She has a mother. There are other women in her lives that can be there to be that type of support. But I think that him specifically, and specifically for T.I. to be taking her, is kind of asserting his dominance and a level of control and ownership that he has over not only her body but her sexuality. And I think that is the big problem for me. It's not whether he cares or doesn't care, or she's vulnerable, she's not vulnerable. And just quickly, just to add to that, there is an argument for T.I., for example, in the sense that he's somebody that is in the spotlight. So his daughter could be even more, so already she's a girl, so she's vulnerable. So she could be even more vulnerable to opportunist guys or people. Do you know what I mean? So he really wants to wrap her in that kind of safety and comfort. But you have to, at some point, respect that she is her own person. Give her the tools to be able to protect herself and let her do that.
Not at
Look,
18.
I think I want to come in quickly because for me, in regards to how we've shaped the topic, we need to understand what we're saying here.
Yeah, sorry.
It's more... No. It's not that what you guys are saying is not relevant, but it's just more to do with the action. So we're talking about the male and female dynamics within modern society. And I think in regards to some of the explanation that you gave, that she could have gone with her mum, or she could have gone with someone else that's come in a female kind of thing. The question is, why does she have to do that? Because I understand where you're coming regarding her being more vulnerable, women being more vulnerable. But the idea of this conversation is to say, why do we feel like women, or because I could suggest something and then my wife could take my daughter, but that ideology is coming from me. I'm feeding that ideology. And I'm feeding this ideology based on the past of men being in that control. And the conversation, I guess, at some point is to say, do men have that? Yes, we understand how the world is set up and how our women or our children could be exploited, because we are men and we've kind of, I guess the problem is we've kind of done it, hence the reason why we have all these issues in our head. But do we have that authority, not even an authority, to even kind of dictate whether it's our wife or our sisters taking our daughters to get these kind of checks? So I'm kind of more drilling down on the action of it rather than whoever takes it, because the question is, why does she even have to do that in the first place? Are you with me?
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
So I wanted to touch on in terms of, I know as parents you know your child, innit? So I know Ali mentioned...
We think we
really
do.
Oh, right.
As parents, is
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I'm saying, no. Let me say it.
Yeah.
You will pick up on characteristics of your
Yes, sir.
child,
Yeah.
So as Ali mentioned before, in terms of, you could have shown them all these examples, told them about something. But if growing up you've seen this child, no matter how much you tell them something, they're going to do their own thing,
Exactly.
or they're going to act a certain way.
Yeah.
You can't ignore those past experiences, and you're going to take on or do extra in certain aspects just because you feel that they may not listen to you, or they may get in certain situations and be more susceptible to outside influences, and they might give in, or peer pressure or whatever. So some fathers might feel... I'm just trying to add the devil's advocate for T.I. is that he might have seen this in his daughter and felt, because he hasn't been doing it all her life to her. I think it was like the past 2 or 3 years. He might have felt at this stage, you know what, this is me stepping in because I feel it might go a certain way or a certain situation. Let me try and take control in that aspect. But I know what you mean in terms of the conversation, in terms of obviously having a son and not feeling to be that kind of
why
protective.
doesn't the son go
or
with the
whatever.
mum to get this check as well?
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Because
mean?
he's
So
a
for
boy,
me,
she's
is that
it's already an unfair advantage. We're
You know-
already at an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
And what
in what sense?
in terms of he's born a man, he's got these things that he doesn't
So
have to
being
aspire
born a
by.
man, you get some privileges.
Yeah, like a male privilege, female
Literally.
privilege. But what I'm saying with T.I. is he's teaching his daughter, your body is not your body, it belongs to me, and we can do all these tests to ensure you've kept your sacredness, but your brother can do whatever he wants. But that body is then, what he's teaching her is that body's mine until I let it go to belong to
release
another
it.
man.
That's it.
So that means my sexuality does not then belong to me,
Yeah.
belongs to this piece of paper and this gynecologist until it's time for me to be betrothed to a man,
That's it.
for my sexuality to belong to him.
Exactly what he's saying.
Yeah, but
That's
then
very, very
I
wrong.
guess
Yeah.
another devil's advocate. Growing up as an African, and this is what we touched on some of these kind of things. It's kind of like always been the case, and I guess this is the reason why I kind of.
I wanted to
struggle.
say that, actually.
because growing up in Africa, and just regarding if someone wants to kind of like marry, like let's say I do have a daughter, but in the African context, the man will come to the house, talk to me. I've seen a beautiful flower. We like this, or seen a beautiful flower in your garden. I want to take. So
That's so creepy. By the way.
no. What I would say to you, go to a traditional
You have to
marriage.
say
When
in
it's
a context
been done,
like that.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what they do.
Trust me. When
No,
it's
it's
been
not.
done
It's
in
nice,
in
but
the
like when you
whole-
say it like plain like that, it's
No,
like,
because it's like a whole storytelling
Yeah,
aspect
yeah.
of it. Someone will say a bird, or there's a whole story telling aspect of it. And in that kind of context, it almost assume as if the father has control of that over that woman until you get to that point where it's like the rite of passage. You meet a man that will take care of you as your father has been taking care of you. Because the whole ideology is that men have to take care of the woman. This is what I'm talking about, the whole modern and the concept around now. Because that's been the ideology for since I've been growing up. It's like the father takes ownership or takes care of their daughter until another man that he feels that will be able to take care of the daughter comes in, and then that kind of transfer kind of happens.
I understand that culture is vital and we cannot disown it. It's part of what we do. Even certain part of culture like Indian, they do it as well.
But then that's where it's dangerous.
Wait, I'm coming there. Exactly there. Because when you are a girl, you have to keep that until you get married. The lady don't really have no experience of sexuality or at all. So she's just with that one person, right? And usually what happens, that lady and that man, the man usually leave the lady because he feels like, because obviously as a man, he's dealt with other women and that woman haven't got no experience at all.
Well, that's a big statement.
No,
Yeah.
no,
That's a very big
I'm not saying it in a
I'd
way.
like to get it out
No,
there.
I'm
It's a
not
big statement
saying.
because we
No,
don't
wait,
have anything to back it
no,
up.
wait,
Just-
no. It's not even about a big statement. It's a kind of like a
No,
context.
you're saying that the man will leave the woman because you're saying that the woman is
Can
not
I
experienced.
let me address
Yeah.
when a woman
yeah, sorry, go on.
is kept there until she get married, right? And then the man usually has done his bit because that's what happens.
But
in
not
the-
all men will do their bit though.
No, majority of it, because men feels like they have the power to do whatever they want, and like what you're saying about IT son. But anyway, when you get to that point, the woman don't have any experience. The man will keep her, lock her, do whatever she wants, go out and do what he needs to do, and then eventually probably leaves her because she says he's not good. He's not getting that taste, that feeling of how he's used to get with other people. That's the disadvantage. I'm not saying I want a woman to start having been sexual from the early age and then whatever. I'm not saying that. But
Well, I think what you're saying
see your
is kind
point.
of like
Yeah.
the freaking the sheets, but outside your like whatever, and it's like, is that even real? But where I would disagree with you, I think that obviously that could be a perspective,
Yeah.
like that could be something that some men do. My fear would be more in the sense of because I have friends who have had less sexual partners than their partner.
Yeah.
And I feel like there is kind of like an unspoken like dominance and like I know more than you.
that's
because
exactly I was
you know,
tapping on that.
because I've had more sexual partners, I've been sexually active for longer, so I know more than you, and that can feed that kind of dominant kind of thinking. And because we use sex as such a powerful tool can feed into other areas of life, whether it's thinking, whether it's roles in the house, and that's kind of it can go into those roles of, as a man, like, I've had more sexual partners, so I know about this, or I know about that. Like, I'm not saying that it's like that for everyone. I'm just saying that could be an avenue that it could go to. Even though, well, I was going to say, we all know that the number of sexual partners that you have does not determine
at all
the quality of the
service.
Right, totally agree. No. I think all that I kind of agree. The point in the statement that I didn't agree is leading to the man leaving the woman. That's the point I was making.
No, I mean,
It was not-
there's
it was
certain
nothing to do
areas
with
that will happen.
Using that as some sort of, okay, I know this, I know more about it, so then that leads into other ways of overpowering the woman or having your ideology over the woman.
Yeah.
That's the point
I
that just want
understand,
to come
but
up with, just so that everyone is aware of.
So we're not allowed to make those kind of blanket statements that, you
No,
know...
because I think it's not that you're not allowed to make the blanket
It's a
statement.
statement, you need
But
to
if
back
you're
it up.
making a blanket statement, you need to qualify that statement. Because I think one thing I need to get across is that in regards to T.I.'s son, this is something someone said, and let me get this across. Because I haven't done the research myself to know whether the son is sexually active. Because we're using a comparison to say how he's treating his son to how he's treating his daughter. So I need to kind of get that across. And this is what I'm saying, that yes, you can make the blanket statement, but you have to qualify with something. There has to be some substance. Because it's like someone making a black saying black people are old, whatever, not, or white people are. It's not generally, it's a stereotypical view, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get across.
What I'm getting at on this topic that we're doing here is that in the black home society community, I feel a black family don't usually talk about sexuality at all.
No.
No, that's a huge issue.
They don't.
It's a taboo.
No,
Well,
but you have to.
Yeah, I think things. I personally think things are changing. Like, and the reason why I say that is because I have friends who are older than me. I mean, not older than me, the same age as me, who openly talk to their parents about boyfriends. You know, and when they were sexually active, their parents were made aware. Yeah, like, and I think it's definitely something that's encouraged more, not necessarily in terms of encouraging your children, but giving your children an opportunity to come and talk to you, because I think that's where a lot of the kind of, there's a gap in
But
terms
is that a
of
Western
understanding.
ideology though? Is that a Western way of doing stuff though? Because I
Well-
think doing a comparison in Ghana, I'm not sure, but I guess that's a blanket statement. And I would say that I'm not sure if that would be the same
We
kind
can't
of
But
say
then
that,
if
though.
you,
conversation.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's Western,
No.
but I think that there
It
is
depends on the
definitely a
child.
Western imprint, if you like. But then if I do think to other communities and countries outside of the Western world, they have ceremonies for when their girls become sexually active or they reach that
They
age.
get married.
You know, not all of them get married.
no, from the culture that I know, this is what I'm saying.
Not
that, you
all
know.
of them get married, but like there's definitely a recognition, and
That
I'm
they're
sure
women
there
now.
will be elders who will, you know, bring the young people, say, oh, when you get married, this is what you have to do when you become sexual. Do you know what I mean? Like there may be, I don't know for sure, but I think that for me, I think it's a good thing to open a dialogue, but I think that within the dialogue, there has to be that level of trust, which is what I go back to, and understanding the roles of women and men, if there should be set roles at all, and respecting them, whatever those roles are. But the respect comes from a level of trust.
No, because I guess when we're talking about roles and roles changing, roles have to change because modernization, things happen in the world where, like for instance, you're looking at the Me Too movement where women are getting their point of view across, and that wasn't necessarily the case before, which kind of then falls back into every other part of life, which would be the family setup, could be society and whatever. Not. So one of it, the reason why I say it's a Western ideology, because one of it could be, because of this happening, it's making us have these conversations that people kind of just assumed roles, and we kind of never really spoken about it. But because of these things happening, it's kind of triggering more conversation. Because this whole TI thing, if it came out 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, I don't think the outcry will be as much as it is now, in all honesty. Personally, I don't think that will be the case. I feel this has kind of fallen into the whole kind of women empowering, which is needed because men have kind of had it their own way for a while. But I feel like it's kind of falling to that kind of thing, which is kind of being looked at, because that before would be seen as, oh, the man is just protective, the father being protective, looking after their daughter. this is why I say that. So when I make that statement,
yes and no, but it depends on where you are. It depends on where you are in the world.
But this in Ghana or in Africa is not a problem.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It depends on where you are and what time. The context is so important. So yes, we have the Me Too movement and it's happening right now. But I don't think that maybe the outrage or the outcry maybe wouldn't be as loud. But there would still definitely be an outcry in terms of specifically to T.I., I think, because
20 years ago.
20 years ago, you think so?
I don't
Seriously?
I honestly don't think so.
I don't think so.
I
not
do,
to the
because
magnitude of as it is
that's
now.
what I just said. I said maybe not as loud, but there would be people
It will not be
on
a topic
escape.
for us to be talking about because
Oh,
it will not get that time.
Well,
Because no
Yeah,
one.
I do. From an
Yeah.
American perspective, yes. I'm not talking about African perspective. Like we're bringing, like if you're talking about, I've come from an African background and this is something that then I wouldn't be out with, fine. But if you're talking about Western world perspective, these are the things that they reserve for the third world. These are not things that they view as progressive. Do you understand? So whether the outcry is big or small, there would have been an outcry because it's not something that everybody does. Do you know what I mean? Because then what's the next step? So now her hymen has been broken. You're going to go and sew her up, like. Do you know what I mean? Like, where do you stop?
Point. You wanted to say something.
I'm from a Ghanaian background. My parents are very as Ghanaian as they come. But sex was always an open dialogue in my house. I got pregnant at a very early age. The first adult I wanted to tell was my dad. And of course he was horrified and angry, but he always made me feel comfortable to speak to him. And he was like, especially if there's an emergency, tell me first. And he supported me and all that. And I never felt bad or ashamed or whatever. Like it was. But I suppose that might be slightly different from different Ghanaian child's perspective. But from my parents, it was always a very...
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it was always a very
depends.
open topic. And then also I think as well that kind of like movements like Me Too as well can sometimes be counterproductive from the sense that I feel like it's taken away power from the parents. And I think that if it's his child, I think he does have a certain right over his or her body, if that makes sense, if she's willing. If she's not willing, in the West there are protective services, there's police, there's social services. If at any point in time she feels uncomfortable, I think she can be protected by that. But then I'm going to contradict myself because also in a lot of, say for example, Asian communities, it can also leave if we kind of get into this narrative, if we fuel the narrative that a father has control over his daughter's sexuality, then I feel like we can perpetuate an image where women can be vulnerable to abuse and death like they are within Asian and Islamic families, where if they are seen to be having sex with people they shouldn't be having sex with or marrying people they shouldn't be, then they are liable to die as a consequence of this. So I kind of think that is a very thin line. I'm really grateful that in the African community that women are not vulnerable to death if our bodies are sexually misused as perceived by our fathers, if that makes sense. So that's a good thing, but also, it can be counterproductive as well.
You know what? I think the reason why T.I. is a bit scared about this, right? I don't know if you guys notice about this. You know the Matrix actor, the black guy?
Lawrence Fishburne,
You know her daughter?
His daughter,
You know what she does?
It's adult films.
Yeah, I think that's probably the reason why he's scared. Because he knows about that story, about that daughter. I think that's why he's trying to protect it.
Yeah, but she did it.
She's
a big adult.
Yeah,
later
she
age.
won, but he's
Completely
thinking
her choice.
I know, but he's thinking that same point, maybe that same line.
I think
That's a good fair point.
I think really, like in regards to this conversation, we have to really and we have to understand how things changes with time, right? And I totally get a lot of the stuff that you guys are saying because I think yes, that statement in Africa, having that channel of communication is very important. But I definitely feel though, and I will kind of repeat this again, that if this same incident happened with a celebrity 30 years ago, this might not be the outcome of it. We might have never really heard about it.
I don't think
so.
So
There are two things. I think there are two things that could fit, and this is just my thing. So one thing could be the whole Me Too movement, but the second thing could be the whole people having a voice now, right? Because of social media, meaning that before the only reason why other people might have not had that conversation together is because I never had a voice. I could have been in my house saying, how can this guy do that? But no one really hears it. So it really doesn't feel like it's making that much of a bigger thing for us to have a bigger conversation. So I feel like that is part, and personally, I feel like that's the two that kind of like got us in this.
Maybe I'm trying to think of how I can get along with that. Like, How I can get along with it is maybe people would be outraged, but maybe not talking about it publicly.
No, but they won't have the platform to even make it public. It's what I'm trying to say with social media, because they didn't have. You have to go to BBC for them to interview you, or go on a radio station. How would you get your voice out there?
Yeah,
right?
but don't you think as well, like the social media movement kind of makes us kind of fuel the same narrative, because everyone's against T.I., everyone's going to be against T.I., and then but he's getting so many DMs right now from black men being like, could you give me the name of the doctor, please? Because he's willing to do it. Does that make sense? But no one's going to come out openly and say it, because we can see which way the narrative is swaying. So no one wants to be slewed on Twitter or have
follow
black
public opinion.
Exactly, or have black Twitter come after you, because you know them people are crazy. No offense, black Twitter, I love you, but you're mad. So it's just like, you know what I mean? It's just, we're not going to be honest.
So even though this is fueling honest conversation, at times we choose on what part of that honest conversation
that's what I'm saying,
settling on because of repercussions of what that might mean.
I actually agree with that.
That's interesting,
I feel like people will go with whoever speaks the loudest. And not necessarily free think for themselves.
Okay, so then that kind of go back full circle then, regards to this whole T.I. behaviour then. So in this behaviour, in this current context of our lives, is it okay for a dad to have that kind of, like, I wouldn't say ownership, but want to protect their daughter? Or in
You
their,
can protect your daughter
in their mind,
to a degree.
And this is what I'm saying, in their mind, because I guess in T.I.'s mind, he feels like he's protecting his daughter, he's doing the right things, making sure that... So is that okay?
That's fine to want to protect your daughter.
Exactly.
It's fine to want to educate her. It's fine to give her the information to empower herself. What is not fine is you going there, making her sign this consent form. That's already, she's putting pressure. Even if she doesn't want to sign it, her dad's there. What's she going to say? Oh, nah, dad, not this time. Okay, so when if he's so passionate enough, he's going to want to try and impose it on her. What then? And as he said, if it comes back that is negative, what's he going to do?
I know. I mean, that's,
do you know what I mean? That at one point it's going to be negative. She's going to.
And when is he going to stop?
Like if he keeps on allowing this to happen.
When do you decide that it's appropriate? That now it's okay.
Maybe you might go for the African format until someone knocks on the door.
This is method.
But
then
at the same time, maybe it's a scare tactic, because then maybe guys will be like, well, who's going to come and knock on her door?
So you just keep people away.
Maybe it's a form of deterrent, and maybe that's why he said it publicly. Not to embarrass her, maybe just to deter. I don't know, but for me personally, I think that there's levels. I think there's nuances. I don't think it's as simple black and white as in every case it's wrong or in every case it's right. I think particularly in this case, I don't agree with it, because I think that there are other avenues that you can go to before he is physically walking her into a gynecologist's office to have her hymen checked. If that is something that he cares about deeply, there are other ways to tackle that, because that's just the physical element of walking someone into an office. But the mental side and the learning of self and the teaching her that she has ownership of her sexuality and her body and her mind, that is way more powerful than actually walking her into a gynecologist's office and bullying her and bullying the doctor into giving over information that doesn't belong to him.
Well,
I think bullying not a strong word. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. Who has if anyone has a point on these, I'll kind of like, so you guys have your points and we kind of move on to the next. There's something I want to think.
I think there's one other thing that where women's biology goes in our favour. You can't actually check whether a woman's had sex. It's always inconclusive. So really and truly, even if the doctor says her hymen hasn't been broken or it has, it still doesn't concur that she has definitely had sex. So there is no viable biological way of proving whether a woman's had sex or not.
But the problem is he believes in that ideology because of whatever...
But either way, no doctor can ever really print on any legal document, or nothing can be upheld in a court of law to prove whether a woman has or has not had sex.
But I don't think he cares about
he
whether...
doesn't care.
He doesn't
states
care
that he
about
doesn't care.
Whether the hymen...
That's his business.
But the hymen can break by...
That's what I said.
So he knows that. But the problem that I have with him with is like, he doesn't care.
Even then he's just not educated.
I wanted Ali to come in.
Sorry.
No, go on. So you're not coming in.
I am. It was interesting.
I was just gonna say, like, he doesn't care. Like, he even if the doctor said her hymen is broken, but it can be as a result of X, Y, and Z. He has determined. I feel like, I can't speak for him. My perspective is that he has determined that hymen means sex.
Yeah.
But that's just
It doesn't matter. He's not going to court
That's
of
just
law.
illiteracy.
No,
Either
that's
way,
what I'm saying.
there's no conclusive test. So if you're a millionaire, you can waste your money. That's fine.
Which would
This
make
is
the
the
whole
stuff.
thing a waste
Yeah,
of time.
so it's basically
but
a waste of time,
that's the
yeah.
whole thing. It's the outcome, innit? Because the
Yeah.
outcome is that you want your daughter to not lose her virginity. But then the reason why, because what Maz is saying is that you're not necessarily getting that outcome
No.
because they could have lost their virginity
Anyway.
And you won't be able to know.
which is where you will not be able to know.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, what Maz is kind of saying, that there isn't anything.
What I'm trying to tap into this is that I think, I know you guys have touched into it, yeah, the family's starting to talk, but I think this educational sexual thing from black families, especially us as a generation now, I think we need to look into it, tap into it. Obviously, your child's not going to come on to you and say, Mom, Dad, I've had sex, this position, and so what or not. But slowly, gradually, talk to them, encourage them. They might not go and talk to you directly, indirectly, but at least speak to like a member or friend. I think that if your child has the very comfortable to be to talk to you, or you give them, you encourage them to appeal to you, most of this stuff that we are having, I don't think it will happen. But because sometimes when some parents have that mentality like, oh, the way I've been growing up, that's the way you're going to be growing up, I'm going to raise you, then that's where there's an issue. And that's when we start, I know this Western civilization that is imposed on us, no, it's not. We are very educated black person. Generally, we are educated because if you look into history, they've come to us taking our information and pass it on and make it to wherever they want. I will say that. But we are very educated. As a individual black people, I know some of us, we have that mentality back home. We're not going to stop no matter what. And some of us are different. Some of us can say, you know what, come son, come daughter, what's happening? Let's talk. Like your first child have a first period, you go out with them, show how to do it, and educate yourself. But the way the child comes to you and talk to you, even you will get educated. Because I don't have a daughter, but if she have a problem with her first period and coming to me, I'll be educated, and next time I'll know what to do and how to talk to her. That's what I think. I think we need to impose this. It's like depression. We're having depression. We don't even talk about it back home. We think that talking about it is going to cause a stigma or an issue. Why is that? Why are we stopping that?
So can I ask a question? Like, so then what is tradition and what is individual choice?
Well, for me, what I understand tradition is...
In the context of the conversation.
In the context of male and female roles.
Okay.
Because there are some things that maybe are seen as tradition,
Yeah.
which is what I'm guessing what
Yeah.
you're saying. But
Yeah.
then, are they really tradition or is it a choice? Because what you said was really interesting about the way that you were brought up. And I've got a son, right? So my son is living a completely different life to me. Like, he's living his best life in terms of what, in comparison to what I lived. He's living a mighty fine life, but to him, he's just living like a normal life. Things could be way better. So it's like, what stuff do I bring from my upbringing to impose on him in terms of the role that he should have? Obviously, growing up in a single parent home,
I can understand.
as a boy, what do I bring and what do I have to adapt?
Okay, for me, my opinion, personally, what you're bringing is making sure your child, your son, respect women, respect your environment, your community, respect elders, and understand where they need to go within 10 years' time and push them. And if you have a woman, the roles is as a woman, respect yourself, first of all, and also respect your elders and whatsoever. But at a certain degree, if your woman want to step out of line, you give them the principle. This is what I was taught. But if you want to come with it, give them an option. It's all about options. That options, it's up to them to learn, because they're very educated. It's up to them to learn or not. That's what I believe, but don't enforce too much.
I think that's a very interesting conversation, because it's like, and this is something that I wanted to talk about, to do with assumed roles and whether that's changing now. Because even in the context of, some people might bring up their daughters to know how to cook, because you need to cook for your man and all that. And this is still stuff that goes on now. And the question is now, should it be flipped around? Because before there was more about just serving a man type of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. But I think when it comes to like, what's the question again? Sorry, I had some.
What part is tradition and what part is just your choices that you make?
I think the tradition part, and I think for us, and I always go back to that, a lot of the times before you get rid of something that's tradition, you need to first understand it.
Yeah.
That's just always been my standpoint. Because it's been done in the past and people are saying, oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, you need to understand in what context was it being done? What was the outcome, right? So once you understand that, then you can make the choice to say whether, oh, this is not something I want to align myself with. So in regards to the tradition part, it's very hard as a parent, because as a parent, you don't get a book, you don't get anything to tell you how you need to grow up as a parent. Plus, there's different dynamics of being a parent. One thing that you mentioned is single parent household. It could be that you're together, you are with your partner, and how do you kind of like pass that kind of ideology along? I feel like, for instance, for me personally, and I think it's a lot of the stuff that Ali's touched on, and because I work in some of these communities, because I manage a youth team, a youth under 13 youth team, and I speak to a lot of the parents, and I know a lot of the challenges that a young woman with a young son might have. I kind of have some dynamics of that in my team at the moment, where I need to go and see the parent, because it feels like the boy's getting to an age now where he almost feels like he needs to put his hand on his mum when it comes to disagreement, right? And I think that's very important in our community in regards to our young men, that they need to understand. For me, one thing I always say to my child, even when my son, when he's playing with my daughter, I say under any circumstance, you don't touch a woman.
Yes.
Right? For me, that's just my motto.
Yeah.
And I guess that came off not necessarily tradition, because tradition growing up, I never seen my dad hit my mum. I've never seen any kind of abuse in my household, in all honesty. Actually, I have when I came over to this country. And that kind of, with my stepdad and my mum. And it was very interesting in the dynamics of it, because one hand, my mum is saying, this is a man I want to be with. So I could challenge this man, but my mum's like, nah, you can't challenge him because then I lose my relationship. And then on the other hand, I'm like, how dare you do this? But a lot of times I wasn't in the house. But anyway, I think that kind of feeds onto the way I behave and the way I want women to be treated, type of thing. So I guess, yes, a lot of it could be tradition. A lot of it could be how experiences that you've kind of had and what you kind of feel like it should be moved on. So I guess I'm not necessarily answering the question, but I'm kind of like answering it in their own context of how I feel like that needs to be thin.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something to think about in terms of if we're going to have a conversation about men, the roles of men and women in the home, because there are so many different outside influences. Do you know what I mean? So, for example, just quickly, my personal perspective, I've got a son, he's 12, and he, to be honest with you, I'll be really honest with you, he doesn't help out a lot around the house. And that's not because I don't want him to, or because I think that because he's a boy he shouldn't. It's literally because we have no time, and him going to wash the dishes, he'll be there for 2 hours and we need to get out of the house. But what I have noticed is that outside influences creep into their ideology of what the male and female roles are. So he tried to banter and be like, can you get me a drink, please? Yeah, like if he's eating or whatever, so can you get me? And I'm like, my friend, your legs and your arms, they work, so you need to get up and get your own drink. But like, that's not something that, how can I put it? Obviously, he's been used to that because I've been his mum. I always get him a drink, I always get his food. But then there's a part of him that understands that I'm old enough to go and do my own things. Like, I don't need to rely on my mum or any woman to do certain things for me. But then there's also an outside influence that is like, women are the ones who serve. Do you know what I mean? Like,
you know, me and my mum have this problem all the time. Not a problem, actually. She's kind of coming around to my way of thinking. I grew up not in a single parent household, but my dad lived separately to my mum, but they were both married and they were always together, but didn't always live together. My dad was in Ghana, my mum was in London sometimes. But my mum always says to me, she's like, the problem with African boys, especially in this country, is that we African women, not saying this is you, this is my household, but we over pamper our sons, and then we don't.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And then we don't,
I mean, not necessarily me, but I've seen it with my grandma and my uncle.
And we don't train them to survive with their wives. And she was like, that's why there's
in Western world.
In the Western world.
Yes,
That's why there's a lack of marriage within the black community than with our white counterparts. There's a lack of us staying together because the men are so used to being pampered. And
used to it.
And that's the thing. And it's like, and she was like, she really wishes she had been completely different. She's like, you know what, instead of making you come from school and buy 12 rolls of toilet roll and the meat, I should have made your brother do it, because you as a woman would have done that anyway.
Yes.
But I needed to give him the tools to be able to do that, to manage the money, to go to Tesco's and know we needed a week shopping with only £25, you know, so he could budget.
My auntie raised me like that.
Yeah.
I went to do everything for her.
It's so funny
yeah.
because so I've got like 2 brothers.
Yeah.
We all shared.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing like, because me, guys, my mouth, like I was feisty and like
Are you a middle
injustice. No, I'm the youngest. Injustice couldn't live where I was living. Like if I'm doing rota day, he's doing rota day, he's doing rota day. If Monday I'm sweeping, Tuesday he's sweeping. Like we had to have it like that. And I agree. I think it's really good.
should.
And like what you're saying, it does prepare equally for the roles when you leave home.
Yeah.
Because your wife might not cook, then what are you gonna eat?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think
Or-
definitely those roles and responsibilities, and I think just touching on what you guys, because obviously my son is 12, but my son, he knows he has to wash the dishes. For me, even when you say, and I've had this conversation with so many different people.
Yeah.
So initially we had a problem because then my wife would say that, oh, it will take him 2 hours to do it.
Then
I'll
it
say,
takes you 2 hours.
and I would
It
say,
takes you 2 hours.
me personally,
Sorry.
I would say,
The next time
so
it'll take you 1 and a half.
Right? And I've
Yeah.
had conversations with aunties, they'll be like, oh, the reason why my children don't, because it just takes them too long, they don't do it properly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so what?
Yeah.
You don't do it
I
properly.
agree.
I
Yeah.
will make sure you
Yeah.
keep doing that,
Until
because
you get it right.
eventually
Yeah.
you're going to get it right.
Yeah.
So a lot of the
And
times
I
I feel
agree.
like, especially for my background as well, and not necessarily our background as in how we see the roles, because sometimes it could just be like how long they take
Sorry.
it,
Yeah.
or are they doing it right,
Yeah.
or they never do it right anyway,
Yeah.
or that type of stuff. We
Yeah.
kind of block our children from having some of these things, because first of all, I feel like yes, it taps into the role, but secondly, it's responsibility.
It is, yeah.
Of you knowing that when you wake up, in my household, you wake up, brush your teeth, whatever, bath before you even think about touching anything, before you even think about
Exactly.
eating.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And now my 3-year-old knows that, so they wake
Yeah.
up and they need to have a bath. They need to, because he's a fatty, like he needs to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, do you get what I mean? And I feel like sometimes it's just us understanding some of these things, and I think children need a routine anyway.
Yeah.
If you ask me,
Yeah.
Like,
Can
'cause
I just
they-
defend myself? Not saying that you.
Oh, no, sorry.
Just
No,
quickly, like-
not even on that. I wasn't
Yeah,
thinking.
no.
I've
But
had this conversation with-
just to reiterate that I completely 100% agree with you, and there have been many things, just on a personal note, I don't even know why I'm doing this, where like he's trying to get out of doing things, and it's like, nah, you're gonna do it. So our water shower is hard to set the water, like whatever.
Same here,
And I'm like,
literally.
listen, it's not
Spend
every
5
day
minutes.
that you're gonna catch me setting up shower. You better go and learn how to do it. Like, and I can be free, but I'm still not gonna do it because you need to learn how to do it. But in that particular instance, like literally, I've told you before, innit? Like we have 12-hour days out here.
no.
It's tiring, but no, I 1000% agree in teaching your kids responsibility,
Especially your son.
Well, I wouldn't say
Yeah.
especially your son. I would say both. Not,
I think
not
especially your son,
I
because
think
of how the world is
especially
now.
your son, yeah.
Because the
Yeah.
male, as you said, that
Yeah.
they get over pampered, so they don't see like. The problem that you kind of have with those dynamics is that they get to an age where they have the woman. And it's kind of something I've gone through myself, where I had a girlfriend and I was expecting her to do so much stuff for me, because obviously my mom does it, my sisters do it, my first girlfriend was doing that. So why would you not do that? Are you crazy? Like, why would you wake up and be asking me to be making breakfast? And I'm thinking, are you having a laugh? You should be making me breakfast. Like, seriously, this is where I'm coming from before, right?
Yeah.
And it's because how I was brought up. But then when you get to an age where you need to understand that, why were you so why did you feel so, and empowered to be expecting her to be doing things for you? Why couldn't you do it yourself? Why
I
couldn't
think
you even do it for her?
you
Do you get what I
nip
mean?
those things
So
in the bud.
it's kind of like
Yeah.
these things where I feel like the men definitely, maybe it might be coming from an African perspective, because I would not know Caribbean or how, because I know a lot of Caribbean men like cooking. Like, so maybe it might be coming from that, but we know that not everyone grew up like that anyway. But that's kind of like what my thing was at a certain point in my life. That's how I kind of saw it.
Yeah.
Because that's how growing up, that's part and parcel of what I've seen.
I think you should teach both. Personally, if we want equality and we want like a utopia, then teach both. Teach your girl. You get up and you make a breakfast for him. Don't expect him to make breakfast for you, but don't expect to be making breakfast for him either. You talk, communicate, and find what works best for you. That's what I think.
Can I just put
So after we're getting into the wrap up stage, so yourself and
I remember taking my daughter to the museum a few years ago, and I saw, and I hope, please, I'm not trying to make any anti-Semitic statements here, but I saw a large Jewish family, mum and dad, and a lot of children were all walking towards the museum together. And the thing I admired the most about this Jewish family was that the girls, like the daughters, were walking ahead, then the parents were walking in front of them, and the children were left with the boys. When I say children, I'm talking about 9-month-old, like twin babies, toddlers, and the boys were in charge of looking after these children. And I thought, what a strange dynamic.
Well, hold on, the men at the front?
The mum and dad were at front, right? Then we've got the daughters behind the mum and dad. And then behind the daughters were the teenage boys that were tasked with pushing the prams of the twins and the toddlers.
That's like the wolf cop.
Okay.
That's the kind of when they're moving.
Yeah.
That's the kind of the same.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, they're leaving the daughters and the boys are looking after these twin babies plus toddlers. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. And I was like, this is why some Jewish people are so successful, because looking after babies and toddlers is nothing for them. So I'm like, so he can be the CEO of Barclays and still come home and raise the children, like as in like bath them, feed them, clean the house, everything, whilst being so economically sound at work, because his parents have equipped him already. They know that the girls are going to have maternal instinct and the girls are going to need to breastfeed the children. They're going to give birth to the children. They'll be tied to the children somewhat. So it's the boys they need to train, not the girls. And I was like, that's what we're missing in the black community. We haven't trained our boys to raise our children. We've only trained the girls, which is a waste of time because they would do it anyway.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to add on to Maz, I think that is such a key thing in acknowledging that you're going to have to raise your boy and your girl differently.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to put more emphasis on certain things with your boys than you would with your girls.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example just in terms of, on the girl aspect, in terms of, I grew up with family friends, siblings, females that would go out with no purse, no money or nothing, and know that they are getting home that night and they're getting their drink paid for, their food, their everything, this, that. And I'll be honest with you, that is a concept that they've grown up knowing, that the men will always provide for them, will always do this and whatever. And I think if you're not consciously acknowledging that, look, your females or your males will have certain ideologies pushed on them and ways of thinking, you have to tackle and exercise those, that they don't go out doing stupidness like that. Personally, I think it's dangerous for the female to be going out with no money and thinking that these people are always going to be doing stuff for them.
Rape, everything.
Exactly, and you're then in vulnerable situations. But like Maz says, I think definitely in terms of the males, equipping them to raise a child, because I think a lot of men or boys haven't really been shown or taught those sort of things and struggle with it at a later age.
Because it
has to be
embedded.
done younger.
Yeah, it has to be done younger.
2 minutes. Everyone get 2 minutes to wrap up. Yeah, time is really against us. Who would like to start?
For me, the male and female dynamics within the family and society. As a household, you have to start from when you're young with your children, educate them, open up with them, have that close relationship with them, because it's very vital. If you have that a close relationship with your children, whether they're going to be an obstacles or an issue, let it be prepared for that. But open up with them at an early age, it will be really important. So you, as a parent, will know your children, not to a degree, but you can know your children of the movement or whatever they're doing. As what Laurie says, she's noticing that how her son is picking up some influence from outside, for example. No matter what, you will know. So it is important to be confident as a parent that you're going to have prepared to have a children and educate them and speak with your wife or your partner, because it's both of you that made that child, those children. So if you're gonna thinking as a man, you're gonna dominate the wife. I think that's the wrong way of going about things, because you need to come to agreement and say, okay, this is what we're gonna do, how we're gonna address it, and make it better for the children. It's all about the children.
So in terms of the dynamics of the male and the female within the family and society, I definitely do feel that you should try and treat them and raise them in the same way. But I do also feel you need to acknowledge that those journeys will be different for the individuals, and you're going to have to tackle those journeys differently based on their sex, just because that is the reality of our society and the world that we live in today. So that's my kind of aspect and view on it.
I think for myself, in regards to the actual question, the dynamics of the male and female in our society, I feel like obviously the men have been in a position of power for such a long time, and I think it's only a good thing that women are having that parallel power struggle, or whatever that you want to call it, because we need to get all views on the table. It can't just be from one male-dominated kind of view. But I feel like a lot of the times as well, I think you guys have touched on in regards to the outside influence, because the specific example I've had within the community, within the football thing that I worked in, is that when I spoke to the parent actually mentioned that around me, he's never seen anyone touch me. So I don't know where he's picking this up from. So the question could be, is it through the movies that he watched? Because at the end of the day, we need to understand that our children are exposed to a lot of things, even when it comes to TV and media kind of thing. So I guess really what I'm trying to say is that I feel like as a man, it's very difficult when these kind of conversations are being had, because when you've always assumed power, sometimes you might not really understand where someone is coming from, because for you it's always been the case. And I feel like we need to educate our boys and even our girls, because that whole understanding of, I'm a woman, someone needs to look after me, is how someone could then get themselves in kind of like the scenario that kind of more you explained. So I think, like, going back to what you said, I kind of take that back to say, yes, I feel like that education needs to be both. It can't just be one way of just saying more focus on our boys, but our women need to understand that they are empowered. They could go out and do whatever they need to do without having to rely on a man type of thing. Anyway, that's what I'll kind of leave on this.
I completely agree with Mo in this, and I think it's a nature versus nurture argument. You could train your child into one particular way, but you don't know what environment they're exposed to. You don't know outside of the house, who they're going to meet. So you need to instill enough knowledge and empower your child that based on this reality, whatever happens, this is a way I want you to kind of grow up and trust them enough to make sure that that's the way that they follow. Because, they'll have friends, they'll have environment, they'll have school. Like, I think they're teaching kids sex education from a really, really young age.
We're talking about that. That'll be one of our topics.
Like, really, really young age. So it's just ensuring that you give them enough tools that they can support and be the person that they want to be.
I'm definitely going to agree with Mo on this one. I think men and women are separate but equal, but I definitely think that you need to as a parent, tackle the vulnerabilities that your child will face because of their sex. Like, going back to your example of the kid on your football team, it's like he probably just doesn't know he's probably not aware of how to channel his emotions. And for a woman trying to train a man how to channel their emotions is almost near impossible. Not saying it's not possible, but it would be very, very challenging. And it's like he needs to know how to channel his emotions more than a female on your team per se, because his male strength is going to be a problem when he's older. Like, a lot of men are sitting in prison right now because they went clubbing, got into a fight, one punch, and they killed the guy. They're not bad guys, they're not gangsters, but because they were not taught or trained how to channel their emotions, it's led them into a situation that a girl probably wouldn't face. It's very rare for us to be able to knock out a guy with one punch. So I think that we do need to highlight to our children the vulnerabilities they are imposed upon due to their sex, and that kind of needs to be eradicated at a young age. And at least now this mother has spotted it and said he doesn't have to channel his emotions, and she wants it tackled, and that's the right thing to do. Not saying that a girl shouldn't be taught how to channel her emotions, but at the same time, she is not her risk factor factor of violence is not going to be as high as a man's risk factor, if that makes sense. I think that we just need to hone in on our children's vulnerabilities due to their sex, and not say that, oh, you're weaker because you're a woman or you're stronger because you're a man, but just to say that this is where society's problems may trap you. So let me try and teach you this now so it doesn't happen. Prevention's better than cure.
Yeah, no, I think it's been like a really good discussion, and I agree with so many different elements of what everybody said. For me personally, I feel like you need to educate them equally, but equally doesn't mean the same. So kind of basically what you guys are saying. So obviously there are different things that are prevalent for boys and different things that are prevalent for girls, but at the same time try to represent both sides in those arguments. Because I think that's a better way at young people or people just in general looking at other human beings, do you know what I mean? Whether you're a man or a woman, to have that level of respect for each other, and to not put ourselves in dangerous situations, whether you're a boy or whether you're a girl, do you know what I mean? So overall, I think that education is important and building a level of trust and communication.
Cool. Good conversation. So back to T. Adam. Was he right? Yes, no, maybe?
No.
Yeah, I think he was right.
Hell no.
I'm more against the public embarrassment of his daughter as opposed to what he is doing.
Just say, do you agree or disagree?
Thank you for listening to this episode of the LDN Perspective podcast. Please get in contact with us. We want to create more of an organic platform. So if you have any questions, please check out Instagram page, which is LDN Perspective. You could also reach us on Twitter, Perspective LDN. And please, you could always drop us an email at ldnperspective@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Perspectives, different views, one voice.